Okay, this is number 8 from section 2.6. We want to find the domain of each function algebraically, and then we'll graph the function and use the graph to help find the range. Okay, so a function like this, in part A, f of x equals 1 over the quantity x minus 2 squared, the domain is going to be all real numbers except the value or values of x that make the denominator of this fraction 0. So all we're going to do is to set the denominator equal to 0 and solve this equation. Okay, so you can take the square root of each side. Okay, and we get then x minus 2 is equal to 0. And add 2 to each side and we get x is 2. Okay, and so we can kind of double check ourselves. If you plug a 2 for x, we end up with 1 divided by 2 minus 2, which is 0, and 0 squared is 0. So you end up with a 0 in the denominator, leading to an undefined expression for the output. So the domain is all real numbers except x equals 2. Now, how to write that is a little bit tricky in interval notation. So we're going to draw a number line and shade, everything else on the number line except for 2. Okay, and then we can write these two intervals, okay, interval 1 and interval 2, and then combine them with a union symbol. So the first interval will be from negative infinity to 2, parentheses, and then union. The second interval will start back right after 2, so we'll put from 2 to infinity. Okay, now we're going to go to the graph and see if we can determine the range of the function. So on your calculator in Y1, just enter the function. Okay, and graph may be in the standard viewing window, so zoom 6. Okay, so the graph looks something like this. We can see that there's no y values below the x-axis, but really this curve, it comes down close to the x-axis, it never reaches it. So the range, although it doesn't start at 0, it'll be numbers that are very close to 0. So we'll say from 0 and then all the way up to infinity with parentheses around both. Okay, and we'll do a similar thing for part B. So if h of x is equal to 1 over x squared plus 2, we're going to set the denominator equal to 0 to determine which value of x is not in the domain. So take the square root of each side, and we see that x is 0 is the only x value not in the domain. Okay, if it helps, make a number line, shade every other number on the number line except for 0, and then write the intervals based off of your shading. So we'll say from negative infinity to 0, and then union from 0 to infinity. Okay, enter the function in Y1 on your calculator, and then graph. Okay, and so for the range, we look at the y values that are on the graph, and there are clearly none down here in this region. Really, the first y value appears to be very close to y equals 2. Okay, and one way you can really tell that it is at 2 is from the formula. Okay, so look at that constant, the plus 2, and that means the graph was shifted up 2 spaces. And so from there, we see that the y values go forever to infinity. Okay, so the range is going to be parentheses 2 and then to infinity.